Earlier today, the House Oversight Committee wrapped up their deposition with longtime Victoria's Secret boss and Jeffrey Epstein funder Les Wexner on his estate in New Albany, Ohio. Only Democratic members participated, no Republican lawmakers joined, and Wexner's spokesperson told MS Now that he, quote, has no knowledge of and did not participate in Epstein's illegal conduct. Okay. But this is the same man whose name appears in the Epstein files on multiple occasions. And while appearing in the files doesn't necessarily mean knowledge of Epstein's crimes, this is the same man whose survivors have long said provided Epstein with vast sums of money. The same man who Virginia Giuffre testified in a deposition that Epstein trafficked her to and who she said she had sex with multiple times. Wexner, we should note, denies that. He's also the same man whose name has become part of the very first Epstein accusation reported to law enforcement. Both Maria and Annie Farmer suffered abuse at the hands of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Maria testified that she was assaulted in the same town where Wexner lives, and today's deposition occurred in the same town where she said that she was prevented from leaving to tell her story by the sheriff and by others tied to Les Wexner. Now, House Oversight Democrats say that Wexner claimed today to have little knowledge or no knowledge of these allegations. Given all that, it's pretty jaw-dropping that Congressman Robert Garcia shared this detail from today's deposition. Wexner told the members that the FBI and the Justice Department never reached out to him. Never. That's crazy. Joining me now is Annie Farmer, survivor of abuse at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Annie, thank you, as always, for being here with me. I just have to start. This is something I think I and our team hasn't really been able to get over. I mean, Congressman Garcia said Wexner told the oversight members that the FBI and DOJ never reached out to him. And we may just know the service. I mean, I just outlined some of the public accusations that are out there. Obviously, he's also been a big funder of Epstein's. What does that say to you, especially given how they handled your own reports of this kind of abuse?
I keep thinking I can't be shocked by information that comes out in this case, and then once again I am. That was extremely disturbing and infuriating, really, to think that given my sister Maria Farmer's report about what happened on his property and the fact, as you said, that his own staff threatened her and tried to prevent her from leaving. Given what we know about what Virginia Roberts Giuffre testified about how Wexner harmed her, the fact that the FBI would never have even questioned him in any way it's just mind-blowing to me.
It should be mind-blowing to any human being with a brain and a soul out there. But is it credible? I can't imagine it is. Is it credible when you hear Wexner says he was just duped by a con man, Epstein?
I think that is very hard to believe. I mean, if we look at the nature of the relationship, the length of their relationship, the amount of money and responsibility he entrusted Epstein with, it's extremely hard to believe that this was not someone that knew more about him, right? This is not somebody that just, stopped by his house or had lunch with him. This is someone who, allowed to be in charge of his wealth, right? And was really the reason that Epstein was able to do things like buy islands and buy jets. And so, no, for me, that is completely unbelievable.
You have long raised, and I hopefully people are listening to you or have started listening to you for a long time, that Wexner was such a major source of Epstein's wealth. I mean, there you mentioned kind of the jets and the islands, but what everybody's learning right now that you've long known is that this is a whole web of people across the country, across the world, and the money is such a key part of it. So broadly speaking, how was all of this wealth, and a lot of it gained from Les Wexner and the relationship, how was it used in this kind of predator ring that Epstein was involved with and leading?
It seems to me from what we're learning from the files is that once he had that type of wealth, it enabled him to then bring in people that gave him, additional kind of, access to people in, whether it was in academia or in the arts, right? It was like once he was considered someone to know, then that provided new relationships that he used and brokered to then ultimately, I think, make people feel like it was worth it to look the other way about the behavior that he was exhibiting that was very problematic. I mean, I think we can see this in some of the, documents about like the going back and forth with the banks. People are flagging this, but it's like, well, but he still has relationships with people in power. So I guess it's worth keeping him on as a client, right? And why was that? Because of all this money that I believe he had from Wexner initially, right? And, I also think it's important to highlight that, this is not the only sexual abuse case that Wexner is associated with. For a long time, the men of the male survivors of Ohio State coach Dr. Stroud, who we know again abused hundreds of young men there, and Les Wexner was on the board of trustees while this was happening, and we know there were very early reports about his behavior. And so, I just think that this is someone that certainly has a lot to answer for.